What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Martian MMA podcast. I am your host, and my name is John. And this week we are back with episode 80, where we will be analyzing and predicting the UFC on ESPN 6 card headline by Dominic Reyes versus Chris Weidman. This 13-fight card will be aired entirely on ESPN2, with the 7-fight prelim card starting at 6 p.m. Eastern Time and the 6-fight main card starting at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. That is ESPN Plus. All 13 fights will be on ESPN Plus. And that's really all we got to say. So let's just dive right into these fights. They're taking place in Boston, Massachusetts this Friday night. It's a Friday event. This event will take place tomorrow night in about 24 hours exactly. So a little bit of a late episode this week, but we have an early card. So that's why you're getting a little late. So starting things off, in the heavyweight division, we have Daniel Spitz, who is 6-2, taking on Tanner Boser, who is 16-5-1. The opening betting line for this one was Spitz, the minus 225 favorite to Boser at plus 190. Right now, we are seeing Boser, the favorite, at minus 130 to Spitz at plus 120. So the line has flipped and a ton more action is coming in on Tanner Boser's way. And honestly, I don't really get it. This seems like a pretty even matchup from both perspectives. They're both kind of similar fighters to one another. They both like staying on the outside, throwing a lot of leg kicks, not really engaging in the pocket too much. The main differences between them are Spitz has that UFC experience. He has, I think, one win in the UFC, but he also has some pretty bad losses in there as well. He lost to Mark Godbeer, just got outclassed by him on the floor and on the feet, and then just got dominated by Walt Harris too. Was pretty scared to engage that entire fight and got finished in the second round. But Boser is making his UFC debut in this one. He's fought some pretty good competition over in ACB, but he just hasn't really looked too impressive getting those wins. He likes winning by decisions, by outpointing you. He can be pushed against the cage. He can have some takedown defense issues, and he really just doesn't have a lot of aggression, doesn't throw with a lot of power. So it's going to be a pretty close fight. I see them both kind of mirroring each other, staying on the outside, throwing a lot of kicks, not wanting to engage in the pocket. Neither one of their boxing is too strong, so I gotta side with Spitz in this one. I think that he has the more athleticism. He's got that reach that he could possibly use. He's got that UFC experience, and I just don't see a way that you can confidently bet a favorite in this fight. I think that Spitz at plus 120 is a pretty decent value, especially after he opened at minus 225. So the pick is going to be Spitz to get it done. I think he does enough to win the rounds to get a decision. The next fight takes place in the middleweight division. We have Kevin Holland, who is 16-4, taking on Brandon Allen, who is 12-3. The opening betting line for this one was Holland minus 230, Allen plus 170. And right now we are seeing Holland minus 160, Allen plus 150. So more action coming in on the dog Allen side in this one. And I'm a bit surprised, honestly. I think this is a pretty favorable matchup for Kevin Holland. I'd say Allen definitely deserves to be in the UFC, and he looks pretty well-rounded from what I've seen on tape. He has fought good competition over in LFA and the Contender Series, but he just hasn't really looked too dominant in one particular area, and I do not think that he will be able to hold Holland down. I think he will attempt takedowns on Holland, but I think that Holland's defensive grappling and his jiu-jitsu will be good enough to avoid spending too much time on bottom. I think he should get back up to his feet or possibly threaten Allen with a submission, getting top position himself. So on the feet in this one, I just think that Holland has the reach advantage. He's just slightly the more fluid striker. He's going to have more effective striking at range in this one, and I think that he's able to avoid the submission attempt and the grappling efforts of Allen, and he's eventually going to tire Allen out and possibly even get that finish late. Now, you don't want to bet too heavily on Holland because he has a tendency of getting into really, really close decisions, mostly split decisions, honestly, and he doesn't really do that much to win. He's not very aggressive, he doesn't push a high pace, and he kind of fights a little lackadaisical at times, so it's kind of risky putting your money on him at minus 150 or higher, but I do think he wins this matchup, and I do favor him probably up to around minus 200, so if you're feeling bold, bet that money line of Holland, but if not, then just pass this fight. I would not say there's any value on Allen. The next fight takes place in the welterweight division. We have Sean Brady, who is 10-0, taking on Court McGee, who is 19-8. The opening betting line for this one was Brady minus 190 to McGee at plus 150, and right now we are seeing Brady minus 210 to McGee plus 190. So even more action coming in on the debutant Brady's way in this one. And another spot where I don't quite understand the line movement in this one. I think Brady has looked decent on tape. He's fought good competition over in CFFC, but just doesn't really excel in one area. Doesn't have the best output. He looks well-rounded, decent boxing, decent takedowns, top control, ground and pound. Has got a few nice knockouts along the way as well, but I don't see one area where he's going to be able to dominate Court McGee in, and that's what you're really relying on, paying minus 200 on him in this spot. So I think McGee's still got a lot left in the tank. I mean, he just came off of a win over Alex Oliveira. He lost, or Alex Garcia, excuse me. He lost that decision to Diego Lima. Not the most dominant loss in that one, but I just think that he can still push Brady against the cage, possibly look for takedowns, have the better cardio in the spot. I mean, McGee is the much more experienced guy by far, and even though he's getting to the tail end of his career, I still think he could possibly grind this one out, pushing Brady against the cage, getting the occasional takedown. But if it stays at distance, I expect Brady to be the one landing the better shots, and we could see Brady put together his breakout performance and really put everything together that he's been showing on the regional scene. And it's like when you watch his regional fights, he shows maybe one good thing this fight, another good thing the next fight. He just doesn't really chain it together and show his full well-roundedness when he fights. So I think this fight is more like a 50-50 type of fight. And in that case, you got to side with the underdog, plus 190 underdog in Court McGee in this one. I might be making my pick a little bit based off of the bet because I think there is a lot of value on McGee, but I'm going to pick McGee to grind this one out to get the win by decision. I think Brady probably wins round one, maybe starts feeling that gas tank diminish a little bit in that UFC debut, cardio drop, and then he starts to lose rounds 2 and 3 by just getting pushed against the cage, taken down, and grinded out by McGee's wrestling style. So the pick is going to be McGee to get it done by 29-28 decision. The next fight takes place in the bantamweight division. We have Randy Costa, who is 4-1, taking on Costa-Salmon, who is 6-2. The opening betting line for this one was Salmon the favorite at minus 165 to Costa plus 125. Right now we are seeing Salmon minus 140, Costa plus 130. So two-weight action coming in on this fight, and rightfully so. It's a pretty close fight. I'm really looking forward to it. It should be really exciting. Two young guys who like getting after it, both specialize in boxing, are probably going to be trying to knock each other out in the first round here. So this should be a really good fight. So the way I see it is Salmon is the more technical fighter. He comes from that amateur boxing background. He should be the better striker on paper in this one, but he should have been the better striker on paper in his last fight versus Khalid Taha too, but he ended up getting knocked out with an overhand right like 30 seconds into that fight with Taha. So a little bit of a mental lapse in that one. Hopefully he's looking to bounce back with his best performance, but that was a bad sign from Salmon in that one. He kind of killed most of his chances at being a legit prospect in the UFC after that performance, but he's looking to get back on track here. Same with Costa. Came in the UFC 4-0, only had like 3 or 4 minutes worth of cage time, and then ended up getting thrown to Brandon Davis in his first fight. Looked respectable. He came out trying to take Davis's head off, landed a few good punches, but he just lacked composure. He lacked footwork. He didn't have the greatest technique. Didn't have good defense. His cardio dropped off. His takedown defense, or his submission defense wasn't good. Eventually getting tapped out with a rear naked choke with no hooks in. So it just looked like his cardio just died on him. And I think that he will be in a lot better shape. I think both guys will be in a lot better shape. Costa will probably have better cardio, better composure, maybe not go so crazy looking for the knockout in this one, and Salmon is going to be looking to play it a lot more defensive, not making a critical mistake like he did last fight getting knocked out. So I think in round one, Costa is going to be dangerous. I think he's going to see that Salmon got knocked out last fight, maybe has a bit of a defensive boxing liability, and he's going to try to replicate what Taha did, and he's going to try to knock Salmon out in round one. Now, he has also done that in all 4 or 5 of his pro fights as well, so there's no real reason to believe that Costa isn't going to try to knock him out in round 1. And I think he could present some problems from Salmon. He could land some hard right hands, and Costa throws with like 100% power, so round 1 should be dangerous for Salmon. If he survives round 1, I think he does win the fight, possibly getting that second or third round finish, or most likely just outboxing Costa to rounds 2 and 3 decision. But with Costa's cardio not being too good, he could have another cardio drop off, and then Salmon could finish him in those later rounds. So I think that pre-fight Costa is actually the value side in this one. Despite him being a pretty raw 4-1 fighter without much technique, I think that he probably looks better in round 1, and you might get Salmon as an underdog after round 1. So we also could see Salmon possibly knock Costa out in round 1 because he's got that superior boxing and could just find a home for that left hand or something. But I think that eventually this fight goes into the second round, and I think Salmon gets the finish then. So I'm going to pick Costa to have some early success in this one. Maybe live bet Salmon as a dog in between rounds 1 and 2. And then Salmon to turn up the pressure. Costa to have that cardio drop off. And then Salmon's going to get that second round knockout. Probably finding a home for that straight left hand of his. So I'm going to go with Salmon to get the second round knockout. The next fight takes place in the featherweight division. We have Kyle Bochniak, who is 8-4, taking on Sean Woodson, who is 6-0. The opening betting line for this one was Bochniak the favorite at -170 to Woodson as the underdog at +130. Right now we are seeing -120 Bochniak to Woodson +110. Another surprising line movement in this one. There's been a few of them so far, and this is another one. I'm surprised Bochniak is not more of a favorite in this one. Woodson, coming in making his UFC debut, has looked pretty underwhelming on tape so far, especially his Tuesday Night Contender Series fight. I mean, it was a respectable performance. He took the fight on short notice, 5 days short notice as well. He's got that tall, lanky frame, 6'2". It's very long and tall fighter for the featherweight division. But he showed pretty good takedown defense in that fight. He defended some choke attempts, and then eventually was able to get back up to his feet and land a flying knee in round 2 and get that knockout in the second round. So up until that flying knee, he was definitely losing the fight. He got taken down. He got his back taken. He got a few sub attempts thrown on him, but he was able to withstand that early attack, and then he was able to knock his opponent out on the feet. So it was a respectable performance. I just wasn't really blown away with it. It was a nice comeback win, but I mean, that fight lasted 8 minutes long, and he was losing 7 minutes and 30 seconds of it. So, and then his other fights, I just really haven't been impressed with his punching power. He has that long, skinny frame, and he just doesn't pack a lot of punch behind his strikes, and that's not what you need versus Bochniak, because Bochniak has crazy pressure. He marches forward the entire time, throwing bombs. He has good takedown defense himself. He defended 8 of 9 of Enrique Barzola's takedowns. He was pretty soundly outstruck by Hakeem Dawodu in his last fight, and that's where he does struggle when he's fighting the more technical striker who has good backwards movement like Dawodu or Zabit Magomed-Sharipov. Both of those guys were constantly moving backwards and outstriking Bochniak, but I do not think that Woodson has that backwards movement and striking capabilities in order to outstrike Bochniak while he's going to be moving backwards. So it's going to be Bochniak marching forward the entire time, and Woodson's going to have to find a way to stop Bochniak because he's going to be Bochniak's going to be landing more volume. He's going to be the aggressor. He could be the one landing the harder, cleaner strikes, maybe even looking for a takedown. So it's going to be difficult to see a path to victory for Woodson in this one, because I think, in my opinion, he's going to have to land that flying knee shot like he did, that crazy powerful knockout shot out of nowhere, or possibly get Bochniak down to the ground and land a submission on him. But Bochniak's takedown defense has been good. His chin has been insane. This guy can take a fucking punch. So it's really hard to see Woodson getting that finish, and I don't see him being able to out-volume and stop the constant forward pressure of Bochniak either. So this is a really favorable matchup for Bochniak. I think I already bet 2 units on him around -140, and I might have to add a little bit more in this one because this is some pretty decent value on Bochniak in this one. Wouldn't go crazy on it, not like a max bet on Bochniak because he's not the most reliable guy, and he doesn't particularly have the best path to victory himself in this one. I mean, it's just outvoluming Woodson to a decision is his best path to victory, but I'd say that's the most likely outcome, and I'm going to pick Bochniak to win by decision. I'd give Bochniak's chances in this fight more like 70-75%, minus 300 or so, so massive value on Bochniak in this one. The next fight takes place in the women's strawweight division. We have Molly McCann, who is 9-2, taking on McCann-Belbita, who is 13-4. The opening betting line for this one was McCann, the favorite, at minus 195 to Belbita at plus 170. Since then, bettors have been smashing that Molly McCann line. She is now minus 525 to Belbita plus 450. I understand it in this one. McCann looks like the much better fighter. She's completely better in every area, I would say. She has the better wrestling, better top control, and the better striker, has more output, better boxing technique. You know, the list goes on, but it's not quite worthy of being minus 525 in this spot. I mean, it's still women's MMA. It's still not the highest level. McCann has looked great in her past few fights, improving fight to fight and cashing bets as an underdog, I might say. She came through for a lot of people as underdogs in her last fight versus Lipsky, and I'm still eternally grateful for McCann for that one. I was actually picking McCann to pull off the upset in that one. So big fan of McCann. She's a really likable fighter. She does some fun things in the octagon when she's in there, and she's no joke. I mean, she has been making legitimate fight-to-fight improvements, and I've been impressed with her. And Belbita, making her UFC debut in this one, pretty basic skills all over the spectrum of MMA in this one. Her striking skills are really bad. She does two things. She either marches forward and throws huge combinations and brawls that out on the feet, or she's super low output and picks her shots. It's like a weird contrast that she does in some of her fights. And when she's brawling like that, she has no defense. She has no technique. She's just winging punches. She has not fought very good competition at all. Pretty much every time she fights a fighter with a winning record, she loses. And she got just dominated by Lauzon-Pearce in her most recent loss. She got pushed against the cage. She got taken down. She got grounded and pounded. She got stuck on her back, outboxed on the feet, double-legged a few times, then eventually got choked out with a mounted guillotine. So I just think that this fight heavily favors McCann. The odds indicate that. I won't spend too much more time on it. I think McCann boxes her up, stuffs any takedown attempts, possibly hits her own takedown attempts, and very likely gets the finish in this one. This is going to be a pretty huge skill discrepancy in this one. I really favor McCann in this one. I'm going to pick her to get the third round TKO, ground and pound TKO from the mount in this one. So McCann is going to be the pick. The next fight takes place in the featherweight division. We have Manny Bermudez, who is 14-1, taking on Charles Rosa, who is 11-3. The opening betting line for this one was Bermudez, the minus 175 favorite, to Rosa plus 135. Right now we are seeing Bermudez minus 150, Rosa plus 140. So two-weight action coming in on this fight. Rightfully so. I actually really like Charles Rosa in this spot as the underdog, and I've been fading Bermudez for a while now. We faded, no, I wouldn't say totally faded in last fight. I mean, the Casey Kenny read was there. We read Bermudez like a book on the Martian MMA podcast the last time he fought. We knew that Casey Kenny, despite having that size disadvantage, he was going to be the better grappler. He was going to outposition Bermudez, and that's what he did for the first two rounds of that fight, and he secured the decision victory. So it's going to come down to the same thing in this fight. I just think that Rosa is the better positionally sound grappler. I think that Bermudez has some decent submissions, decent chokes, triangles that he can throw up from some awkward angles, but he is not a positionally sound grappler. And what I mean by that is he's not the type of guy who to take you down, to establish a dominant position, and to let the sub come to him. He doesn't take his time. He doesn't have good top pressure. He really likes snatching submissions in transition, like a guillotine or maybe jumping a flying triangle or something like that. But in terms of holding people down and making the sub come out naturally. He does not do that, and that's where he's going to struggle in this fight, because if he's looking to just snatch up a submission like he did versus Kenny, he's not going to get it. He's going to end up on bottom, and he's going to have the better grappler on top of him in this one. So even though Charles Rosa is coming off that long layoff, he has not fought in 30 months. It's a long layoff, but I'm actually pretty confident that he's going to be in good shape here. Few reasons. He's from Massachusetts. This fight will be taking place in Boston. He's going to have the crowd behind him. And if you check his Instagram, this dude's been training like crazy. He's been training in Thailand, working on his striking. He's been training at American Top Team, the best gym in the world. He's been traveling all over different countries, working on his boxing and his jiu-jitsu, his wrestling. He documents it all, and that's exactly what you want to see. Not a guy coming off the couch who just heard of an event coming to a local Massachusetts and decided to get a fight. He's been training hard. He's been making improvements, and I actually think we're going to see a better Charles Rosa than we did a few years ago. And I should mention for this fight also, Bermudez did miss weight, and he's moving up to 145. So he's fought at 35 before. He missed weight for that. He made 140 like 3 months ago, and then all of a sudden now he can't even make 145. I think he weighed in at 148 or something. So Bermudez has major weight issues. I think that, I mean, he just doesn't look in good shape. He looked pretty soft on the scales. He moved up in weight class, and he still missed weight. I mean, that's a terrible, terrible sign. And you can still get Rosa as a plus 140 underdog in this one. So I think that Rosa is able to avoid the sloppy submission attempts from Bermudez. He's able to end up in top position on the ground. And when it's on the feet, I think that it actually should be a little bit competitive. I think that Bermudez actually has some sneaky good striking. He was landing his right hand pretty decent against Casey Kenny. Not the highest level striker is Kenny, and he's also way undersized. So I just don't think that right hand of Bermudez is going to be enough to compete with Rosa on the feet. Rosa's got the much more diverse striking, the crisper boxing, the better kicks, and I really favor Rosa in this one. I think that despite that long layoff, he's going to come in here and he's going to cash as that plus 140 underdog. So we're nearing I'd say we got 2 units already on Rosa. I'd say we're prospecting a 3rd unit on Rosa in this one. It's a really good matchup, and I think he's going to cash as that dog. So the pick is going to be Rosa to get it done by decision. Now moving on to the main card of this UFC Boston card, we are starting things off in the middleweight division, where Darren Winn, who is 6-0, is taking on Darren Stewart, who is 10-4. The opening betting line for this one is Winn, the minus 185 favorite, to Stewart as the plus 145 dog. Right now we are seeing Winn minus 115, Stewart plus 105. Much more action coming in on the dog Stewart's way, and rightfully so, because that initial opening line was set way too in favor of Darren Winn. I mean, he looked good in his debut and everything, but let's not get out of hand, capping him 2-1 over Stewart. Even though he looked good in his debut, Winn did, he wasn't able to get any takedowns. He comes from a wrestling background, but his boxing was on full display, had a super high output, was able to land, I think, 170 significant strikes on Eric Spicely. Now, that's a good and bad thing. It shows that he has great output and that he can land close to 50 punches a round on average in his first fight. But he was landing those punches clean on Eric Spicely, and you shouldn't have to take 170 strikes to hurt someone or to knock them out. So I think the official statistics say he landed 125 significant strikes to the head, and he still really didn't hurt Spicely at all. So I'm really unimpressed with Winn's power, and he's definitely going to be at a power disadvantage here versus Stewart. Stewart is a super battle-tested guy. He's been in the UFC for a while. He's got some nice wins, losses, has a couple knockouts, some decision wins, decision losses, knockout losses. He's got a little bit of everything, and I just trust Stewart a little bit more in this spot, because Winn will have that advantage for sure in the output. He's going to be throwing more strikes, and it's going to be hard for Stewart to win the rounds when Winn is being so active. You're really relying on Stewart getting the knockout in this one for him to win, because he just doesn't have the output to match Winn. I mean, he's notoriously low output himself compared to Winn, who lands 11 strikes a minute or something like that. So small sample size on Winn, of course. That's why he has 11 a minute. But in this fight, I think that it stays mostly on the feet. I don't think Darren Winn will hit the takedowns, although Stewart has shown some takedown weaknesses in the past when he got out-grappled by Shabazian not too long ago. So the takedown could be there for Winn, but I just think he keeps this one standing and out-volumes Stewart for another decision. The bet in this one is going to be Stewart no scorecards. That means if Stewart gets the finish, you win. If the fight goes to the decision, you get your money back. And if he gets finished, you lose. The reason why I'm betting that is because Winn landed 125 strikes to the head versus Spicely, still wasn't able to finish him. I doubt he's going to be able to finish Stewart, and Stewart doesn't have the output to win on the cards. The only real way that he can win is by finish. That's why the no scorecard bet is a good one for this one. So the official pick is going to be Winn by decision, but the bet is going to be Stewart no scorecards. The next fight is in the women's flyweight division. We have Macy Barber, who is 7-0, taking on Jillian Robertson, who is 7-3. The opening betting line for this one was Barber, the favorite, at -210 to Robertson, +170. Right now we are seeing Barber -125, Robertson +115. So the people who came in early on Robertson definitely got that good line. That line was set a little too wide, in my opinion. I do agree with Barber being the favorite in this one. She is the more well-rounded martial artist. She's definitely got a little bit of name recognition and hype behind her as well. But Robertson is solid. She's really one of the most positionally sound grapplers, women grapplers in the UFC. And the only time I've really seen her make some bad mistakes on the ground were versus Silva when she got armbarred from her guard, which was a pretty vital mistake, and it possibly could be a threat here because Barber has some good submissions off her back. So let's get down to how this fight's going to play out, and it's going to be Robertson looking for the takedowns. She should have an advantage in the jiu-jitsu game, but just a slight advantage. I would say maybe like a 65% to 35% to Barber, if you know what I'm talking about. Slight edge to Robertson on the ground, but on the feet, I give a huge advantage to Barber, like an 80-20 split to Barber. If this fight is at range, it's going to be Barber landing the hard strikes. She's got some decent punches, kicks, and knees. Leaves her chin wide open and doesn't have good boxing defense, but Robertson really doesn't throw strikes. She's really looking to get inside, close that distance right away. She doesn't mess around with striking at all. And that's the right move because she is a grappler. She needs a little bit of striking to set up her takedowns, but not much else than that. And in the clinch in this one, another huge advantage for Barber. I think Robertson got chewed up in the clinch versus Barb Hanchak, taken down by Hanchak, and controlled on the ground by Hanchak. So Robertson definitely has her weaknesses. The striking and the clinch aren't the best for her, and she really only has the takedown and the submission as her path to victory in this spot. It's a legitimate path to victory. I just don't think it's the right side to be betting on because Robertson can only win the fight one way, and that's getting takedowns, top position, and possibly getting the submission or winning rounds like that. Meanwhile, Barber could win the fight by keeping it on the feet and stuffing takedowns. She could do that for 15 minutes, win a decision. She could knock Robertson out. She's finished both of her opponents in the UFC so far in the second round by TKO. And she could potentially be the one on top of the grappling exchanges on the ground. Barber is a very legitimate grappler. She has been taken down in the past. Let me bring up the women's names. She did get double-legged a few times in her LFA fights, and that was not a good look. It was the Mallory Martin fight and also the Audrey Perkins fight. She spent some time on bottom in both of those fights. She did have some decent scrambles to get back up to her feet. She was able to reverse position. I think both or all three times she was taken down, she was able to reverse and actually get like a back take on Perkins and Martin. So she definitely doesn't have a good first layer of takedown defense, but she can scramble on the ground. She can retain guard. She can threaten with the submission off her back. Haven't been too impressed with Barber's submissions because in those few fights I mentioned, she must have had 3 locked-in arm bars and 5 locked-in triangles and just couldn't finish any of them. She wasn't really facing 2 high-level grapplers. She had some good entries to the submission. It looked like the triangle was there. She just couldn't finish it for some reason. And Robertson, on the other hand, has been looking great with her grappling, been taking women down, tapping them out, has had some good submissions over UFC level talent like Sarah Frota, like Veronica Macedo, Molly McCann, Emily Whitmire, Hannah Cybers. She's subbed all of them, and all 5 of those women are UFC. Frota's not really a UFC level, and she got cut, but 4 of those women are legit UFC level fighters, and Robertson was able to tap them all out. So the fight is kind of submission or bust for Robertson. She could get Barber down, maybe with a double leg, a single leg, possibly a caught kick. Could flatten Barber's shoulders out, maybe get her into half guard, pass her guard, get on top, side control, mount, back take, and get that submission. That's her path to victory. I'd say the chances of that happening are like 30-35%. And that's just not good enough for me to bet on her at the money line. So the money line value is on the favorite, Maycee Barber, in this one. I think she's able to avoid getting stuck on her back versus Robertson, able to avoid the submission, keep this fight standing, and do some real damage versus Robertson on the feet. So I'm going to go with Barber getting another second round TKO. She's 2 for 2 in second round TKOs, and I think she'll get another one here. So the pick is going to be Barber to get the second round knockout. The next fight takes place in the lightweight division. We got Joe Lauzon, who is 27-15, taking on Jonathan Pearce, who is 9-3. The opening betting line for this one was Pearce minus 135, Lauzon minus 105. Right now, we are seeing Pearce minus 160, Lauzon plus 150. So more action coming in on Pearce's way, and I understand why. I wouldn't say I agree with it. I understand why. And it's people fading Joe Lauzon. And they have every right to do that because he has looked, I'd say, worse and worse over the past few fights. He's coming off of a long layoff. And he's just had an insanely long career of wars and knockouts and cuts and back and forth fights. And full disclosure, Joe Lauzon is one of my all-time favorite fighters. He was one of the fighter to get me interested in watching UFC all the way back in 2013. And I got into the Joe Lauzon game a little late because I think his best years were already behind him by the time I became a fan of him. Since then, it has suffered more losses than wins, I would definitely say. He's picked up a few decent wins over the past few years, but for the most part has been declining, losing decisions, and most recently taken a lot of damage. The Clay Guida fight, he got knocked out in a minute, and that Gritzmacher fight, last fight, was just brutal, man. Lauzon looked good for the first maybe 3 minutes. He was winning for the first 3 minutes, and then his cardio dropped off. He started eating punches, and from the 3-minute mark to the 10-minute mark was just Lauzon eating punch after punch. It was pretty brutal to watch. Luckily, the corner stopped it in between rounds, and that's why you're seeing people fade Lauzon here, is because he's taken so much damage. He's at the end of his career. He's definitely on the verge of retirement. This very well could be his retirement fight. But it's a winnable matchup for him because Pearce has not looked that impressive to me, honestly. He was fighting a guy named Baker, and this guy was a terrible fighter, and Pearce struggled finishing him. He had him hurt multiple times. He just didn't have that good finishing instinct to get the finish, the knockout or the submission. It took him like 5 minutes to finish this guy while he was extremely hurt. And the thing is about Lauzon is, even though he doesn't have the greatest chin, he doesn't go out from one punch. He can take an insane amount of damage, and it's like he doesn't get dropped or knocked down very frequently. He just gets knocked out on his feet. He still has his feet underneath him, and he's still fighting, but he's just not really there. And it's going to be hard for Pearce to finish him. And then that Rosales fight on the Tuesday Night Contender Series, Pearce's boxing defense didn't look very good. He was landing some punches, but he was also absorbing some too. I think he lost that first round. And he almost got his neck snatched at the end of that round 1 too. Rosales shot a nice takedown and then transitioned to a guillotine, and had that guillotine totally locked in. Luckily, Pearce was able to get his foot on the cage, and the cage saved him from getting tapped out in that one. But I think he left his neck a little open there, and that could be a path to victory for Lauzon in this one. And just on the feet, Pearce's boxing defense is just predictable. He moves his head in a very similar, repetitive way. He doesn't move away from punches well, and I think that this fight is winnable for Lauzon in not only in the grappling, where he should have the biggest advantage, but I think Lauzon could give him some trouble on the feet as well, because Lauzon does throw leather for those first few minutes. I think that he hopefully he realizes that he cannot come out and brawl like he's 24 years old in the UFC anymore. You know, he's 35 years old. He's been fighting in the UFC for 10, 12 years straight at the highest level, and he's got to adapt his fighting style. So if he comes out here a little more calm, a little more calculated, and looking to pick his shots on the feet, he could end up landing on Pearce, maybe looking to set up that takedown and get that submission on the ground. So this pick is a little bit based on the fact that I love Joe Lauzon. I would love to see him retire on a win. Seeing him get a win right here in Boston and retire, you know, would just mean the world to me, honestly. I'm not much one for sentimental moments in MMA anymore. Ever since we started betting, you can't be fans of guys anymore. But you have to take each one of their fights fight by fight. But Lauzon's one of the few guys who I will support no matter what. I'm picking him in the spot because I want to believe, and it's a decent matchup, honestly. So I think the value is definitely on Lauzon in this one, even though Pearce has looked decent on tape. He's facing an old fighter who's on the way out. I don't think you can be laying minus 150 on him to win this spot. There's just no evidence that he can beat Lauzon. You're kind of just fading Lauzon, which he might win, and you might be correct about this one, but I don't think that Pearce will look minus 150 out there. So the pick is going to be Lauzon to get it done by first round submission. The next fight takes place in the heavyweight division. We have Greg Hardy, who is 5-1, taking on Hardy-Sosoli, who is 7-2. The opening betting line for this one was Hardy the favorite at minus 450 to Sosoli at plus 350. Right now we are seeing Hardy minus 295 to Sosoli plus 265. So actually a little bit of action coming back Sosoli's way in this one, and it's pretty surprising, honestly. I mean, I haven't really seen anything from Sosoli on tape to think that he can beat Hardy. Sosoli is that typical Australian heavyweight who just throws punches, doesn't have any defense, no nothing besides punches. That's all they do. We saw it last week with Tafa, or a couple weeks ago with Tafa, got knocked out in the first round. We saw it with Tai Tuivasa, got tapped out in the second round. And I think Sosoli is getting knocked out in the first round here. I mean, it's 2019, and these guys are coming into the UFC expecting to just be haymaker punchers. I mean, I know the heavyweight division is pretty bad. Greg Hardy is a very consistent fighter in the heavyweight division in 2019. That says it all. But you can't be coming in here just expecting to be throwing straight hands. And it's kind of hypocritical that I'm saying this because Hardy is just pretty much straight hands. That's all he does is throw hands. But he's just so much more athletic. He covers distance with his punches more. He's definitely got the better defense. He throws with more power. His punches honestly have a more crisp technique. Sosoli looks like a bum. He just marches forward with his hands low. He can't stop a takedown. He got dominated on the ground by Espino. That won't really matter in this matchup. But he was getting hit a lot versus Fatal. He got hurt by Fatal. He lost all composure. He was super like bending over in pain. He eventually came back and landed a left hand that dropped his opponent Fatal, and he got the finish. But I just think Sosoli's defense is terrible. I think that Hardy's going to find a home for that right hand early in the first round, and it should be a slobber knocker fight. Of course, Hardy could get knocked out. The guy doesn't have great defense himself. He's still very raw, and they should swing it out until one man falls in this one. So it's entirely possible Sosoli pulls off the upset, but I pretty heavily favor Hardy in this one. He's got the athleticism advantage, the power advantage, the UFC experience, fought the better competition, and I think that he finds home for his power punches and gets the knockout in the first round in this one. So the pick is Hardy by first round knockout. In the co-main event, we have a rematch from only 1 month ago in the featherweight division. Yair Rodriguez, 12-2, taking on Jeremy Stephens, who is 28-16. The opening betting line for this one was minus 110 for both fighter. Right now we are seeing minus 105 for both fighters. So a dead pick'em, a coin flip. The odds indicate that both of these guys have a dead even chance at pretty much 50-50 with a little bit of wiggle room to cover the books to make some money. If you don't understand what I'm saying, they couldn't make it plus 100 because then they wouldn't make any money. If they made it plus 105, they would lose 5 cents on every dollar. But when they make it minus 105, they're making 5 cents on every dollar no matter what. So even if you win a bet, they're still making money. So getting down to this matchup, we broke it down last month on the Mexico City podcast. You can go back and listen to that one if you want a little more detailed analysis. But I'll start off with their most recent fights tell the tale of this fight. Not the rematch or not the one fight that got canceled. If you don't know what happened in the first fight, they square off 15 seconds into the fight. Yair Rodriguez pokes Jeremy Stephens in the eye. It was so bad, Stephens couldn't see. The fight was over in 15 seconds. So nothing got to play out. But if you look at their fights before that, Yair Rodriguez loses about 18, 19 minutes of that fight versus Korean Zombie, struggles with the boxing of Zombie, gets out-volumed, eats a lot of punches, and then finally lands that up elbow to get the knockout in the very last second of the fight. It was insane. It was crazy, but don't let it distract you from the fact that Yair Rodriguez lost 18 minutes of that fight. He did not look good striking backwards. He struggled with the volume of Korean Zombie. He got outboxed. And moving over to Stephens fought Zabit Magomed-Sharipov, one of the best backwards moving strikers in the sport. That means if he's moving backwards and Stephens is chasing at him, Zabit can move backwards and strike you at the same time, which is a very hard skill to do. And Zabit does it pretty much better than anybody in the UFC. But even so, Stephens' pressure was wearing on him. Zabit was tired in round 3. Stephens was landing some punches. He was chopping the legs down. And it's similar because Yair and Zabit have a similar frame. They both kick a lot. It's just Zabit is so much better moving backwards. He has better boxing. He's got the way better ground game. He actually took Stephens down and kept him down for a little bit in that fight. So the threat of the ground game is not going to be there from Yair. The threat of the accurate punches moving backwards aren't going to be there. Stephens is only going to really have to look out for the flashy kicks and the flashy spinning techniques of Yair, which are dangerous, but I think that Stephens will be able to deal with it. Now, I like this fight for Stephens a little bit more. When it was 5 rounds, I thought that the pressure would wear on Rodriguez and Stephens would really start outboxing Rodriguez in the later rounds and possibly getting that finish, but I still think Stephens can get it done in 3 rounds. He's just going to have to be a little more aggressive. And there's a chance that these guys come out really aggressive and real emotional because their fight got canceled. They were talking shit. There was a lot of animosity and emotion between the two of them. And I think that they could just come out and swing it for the fences in this one. But I think Stephens will be the one pressuring. He will be the one getting into his range, which will be the boxing range. I don't think Rodriguez will have the footwork or the backwards boxing in order to keep Stephens off of him. And then Stephens going to get into range. He's going to chop Rodriguez's legs down, and he's going to look to find a home for that overhand right. And I think he does. I think Stephens gets the knockout in this one. I'm going to go with a second round knockout for Jeremy Stephens. In terms of the money lines in this one, I guess you could bet on Stephens. So I remember I had some bets on Stephens at plus 105, plus 110 before that fight got canceled. He hasn't even made it to plus money since the fight has been out, so there's not much value in the lines in this one. I guess you could throw some 1 or 2 units on Stephens, but I think it could be a little bit closer of a fight over 3 minutes, even though I don't really have too much faith in Yair. I think that Stephens gets this one done, and he gets it done by knockout. The next fight is the main event of the evening in the 205-pound lightweight division. We got Chris Weidman, who is 14-4, taking on Dom Reyes, who is 11-0. The opening betting line for this one was Reyes the favorite at minus 185 to Weidman plus 145. Right now we are seeing Reyes minus 160 to Weidman plus 150. So two-way action coming in on this fight. I agree with the two-way action. I think that this line could be a bit closer. You got former 185 champion Chris Weidman moving up to 205 pounds for the first time. He's 1-4 in his last 5 fights, and in all of those fights, he's taken a lot of damage. He's been knocked out a few times. Even in the fight that he won of those 4, he was knocked down in that fight with straight left hand from Kelvin Gastelum. So he struggled lately. He's just taken a lot of damage over the past few fights. He's definitely declining, and this move out of 205 is a move out of desperation. And I talked about it last week on the podcast with Nico Price. Whenever you see a guy moving up in weight after 2 or 3 losses in a row, it's not a good sign. It's showing that nothing is working at the weight that they've always been fighting at, and they're looking for anything to improve their chances at winning. And if that means going up 20 pounds in weight like Weidman is, then that's what he's doing. And we could see an improved chin, we could see improved cardio from Weidman, or we could see him be undersized. We could see that chin not improve and he could get knocked out by Reyes early, but I don't think that happens, honestly. I think this is going to be a good fight for Weidman. I think that he could implement his grind and takedown, top pressure, ground and pound type of game plan that he likes doing. And I think that he could beat Reyes in this one. And I'm actually going to pick Weidman to win this one. So getting down to how this matchup comes down, Reyes will be the better striker at range. He's going to be the natural light heavyweight in there. He's going to have a reach advantage. I'd say he has the boxing advantage in this one, although Weidman has been making boxing improvements, leaps and bounds from fight to fight. And his hands look sharper than ever versus Jacare that last fight. He was winning rounds 1 and 2 of that fight before he started. His cardio dropped off around the 8-minute mark. His output dropped off, and he started getting hit with a lot of shots from Jacare. And eventually, in round 3, these boys were trading back and forth combinations, and eventually Jacare-Souza was able to find a home for that overhand right and knock Chris Weidman out. That's Weidman's problem, is he wins fights early and then loses late. He was doing that with Romero and Mousasi and Rockhold even, and in that case versus Jacare, and he ends up getting knocked out in all of them. So it's a bad habit. He tends to throw fights away a little bit, but I think that he will have a better cardio at 205. He's going to have the wrestling advantage, definitely the jiu-jitsu advantage versus Reyes in this one. Reyes has shown pretty good takedown defense. He stuffed a bunch of OSP's takedowns, but that fight versus Volkan-Ozdemir was kind of worrisome. Volkan-Ozdemir is not really a great grappler, and he was able to take Reyes down a few times. He was able to just kind of hold on to Reyes and maybe get 30 seconds, a minute of top time, but Reyes has pretty good get-ups. He's got good takedown defense, and it's going to be difficult for Weidman to get him down, but I think Weidman's got the style for it, because Reyes, he'll get taken down once and he'll bounce right back up, and when he gets up, he does it very explosively, I don't know if that's even a word. He does it very powerfully and uses a lot of explosion to get back up to his feet. He doesn't use a lot of technique, and that kind of leaves him open for possible submissions, possibly getting taken back down again. So I think we're going to see Weidman come out here and pursue the takedown real hard, and he might get Reyes down, and then Reyes is going to bounce up. But that's where Weidman's second layer of takedowns is going to come in. He's going to drag Reyes back down to the canvas. He's going to try to tire Reyes out, get a dominant position, mount side control back take, and look to either get a ground and pound TKO or a submission. And I think this fight actually has a decent chance. It ended up looking a lot like the fight versus Gastelum and Weidman, where Gastelum had some success early with the striking. Reyes might have some success early. And then in rounds 2 and 3, I expect Reyes' output to drop off like it always does. It dropped off extremely versus OSP. It dropped off even versus Volkan too. He's only been in the second and third round twice in his entire career. He's got like 9 first-round knockouts and only been in the decision twice. And one of those was a great performance versus OSP. One was a little bit of a shaky performance, split decision versus Volkan-Ozdemir. So he's never fought the 5 rounds. And it's going to be uncharted territory for Reyes in those later rounds. And that's where I just favor Chris Weidman to take over this fight. He's going to have that 5-round experience. He's going to have that wrestling advantage. And if he's able to trap Reyes on bottom in rounds 1 and 2 and expand some of that energy of Reyes, it's going to pay dividends in those later rounds. And we could possibly see a finish from Weidman in rounds 3, 4, and 5. So I'm going a bit against the grain in this one. I haven't seen too many people being confident in Weidman. I've seen a lot more people thinking that Reyes is going to stuff the takedowns and is going to do damage on the feet versus Weidman and possibly even knock him out. But I think that this striking in this fight will be a little closer than people think. I think people are assuming Reyes is going to have a massive advantage striking. I think it's going to be more of like a 60-40 advantage for Reyes in the striking. He's going to have the reach and the size advantage, but Weidman, his boxing defense his boxing offense is always improving. He always has the best boxing defense, but I just think that he's going to find a way to grind this one out. I think he's going to get those takedowns. He's going to pursue him hard, chain together multiple attempts, get top position, tire Reyes out, and get that late finish. So I'm picking Chris Weidman to get it done in this one. I hadn't thought about who was going to win this fight until like a day ago, maybe even today. And I was kind of surprised that I think that Weidman is going to win. You know, pre-tape, I guess I kind of lean Reyes, the natural light heavyweight. He's on a win streak. He's looking good. He's looking improved fight to fight. His takedown defenses look pretty decent. Get-ups have looked good. But when I watched the tape, again, when I watched it back, I saw some mistakes from Reyes. I saw some holes in his takedown defense and his get-ups. And I watched that fight back with Gastelum, and I was way impressed with Weidman. He grinded that one out. His takedowns, the top pressure looked good in that one, and he eventually got the submission in the third round versus, well, Gastelum. So I'm going to pick the same outcome in this one. I'm going to go with Weidman to win by third round submission. So in terms of the betting so far, not that many bets locked in. Let's see here. We got 2 units on Kyle Bochniak at -145, 2 units Charles Rosa at +130, 1 unit on Lauzon at +140. And so far, no bets, but the ones I will be considering would be the Holland money line, Spitz money line. Got a small play on McGee money line. I forgot to mention that one. Possibly Costa round 1. Maybe Macy Barber money line, maybe Jeremy Stevens money line, and possibly even Chris Weidman money line. So a lot of prospecting bets. I'll have to make my final decision over those over the next 24 hours. But you can catch my final bets over at my Bet MMA Tips page, which you can find on my Twitter, or I'll probably tweet out my bets before the event as well. Follow me on Twitter at UFO_UFC. UFO_UFC. So hope you all enjoyed episode 80. Hope you all enjoyed the card this weekend, and I will catch you all next week. Peace.